You needed a job. They made $1.9 billion, making sure you couldn't find one efficiently. Mapping the litigation landscape of online hiring, one company at a time. Hi, my name is Sarah Trumbull. I am the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective, the first anonymous user reviews for job ads across the U.S. Think of it like Yelp in a world of professionally mandated fine dining with no health department, no FDA, where the restaurants make more money the longer they don't serve the customers any food, which they have been openly describing that they're doing since 2013. Yeah, not cool. So we rather think we're the future of HR tech and running a paradigm shift here, trying to meet people where they are in a variety of ways. This comes out in video and audio format as well as written format once or twice a week. It's a bit of a long one, as the more recent ones are. So I'm just going to get started. This is the first installment in a series that examines the online hiring industry company by company, using their own public record as the source material and the basic market structure as the baseline. The method does not vary. If you haven't read the framing piece, it lives in a previous blog, Selling Known Failure Modes as Innovation and Online Hiring. Taleo is where we start. For this case, we take 3 of our 5 failure modes previously described. Not because it's the worst example, Taleo isn't. We just have to start somewhere. Taleo Corporation founded the SEC from 2004 through its acquisition by Oracle in 2012, leaving a public record that is clear. That record shows in the company's own language what was built, who it was built for, and what it was worth when a sophisticated buyer decided to pay $1.9 billion for it. No internal documents required, no whistleblower. The receipts were always public. We are going to read them out loud. Caveats. Before we begin, 2 things are worth making explicit. First, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a structural systems theorist moving from first principles of economics and publicly available data. The companies discussed here operate across many different legal and regulatory systems. The goal is not to make legal claims, it is to make the systems visible. I trust legal firms to decide whether my public descriptions of what these systems are versus what they claim to be represent legally actionable choices. I wouldn't write what I do if I wasn't rather confident that several points are actionable. But discretion and better understanding of the legal code in each region that is touched by these systems is part of the process of actual civil suits. Second, this is an evolving body of work. I'm writing as part of a small, academically minded startup, mapping the gap between how online labor markets function and how they are described. The frame is grounded in observable facts and established economic theory. As evidence accumulates, the analysis sharpens. That is not a weakness of the method. Perfection is a myth. As with all of my work, it is the method. The intent is simple. Increase clarity, and in doing so, increase agency for the people inside these systems, job seekers, municipalities, and anyone else affected by them. Who this is for? Job seekers, the largest group in the system, yet the least represented in its design. I think I calculated in the US, they're well over 95% of the users of HR tech and talent acquisition stuff, and almost none of their side of the market is at all instrumented. They're in so much trouble, the HR tech and staffing and recruiting industry is right out in the open. But I hope job seekers, I make this visible for them so that they can feel empowered to take action themselves. Small businesses, paying for labor signal, receiving noise, and absorbing hiring friction as operational costs. Municipalities, downstream carriers of tax strain and service pressure caused by participation loss. I'm going to say it's social erosion caused by such a breathtaking shredding of a social contract. Legal practitioners and economists. The architecture of harm described here is documented and patterned. The case construction is yours to make. I mean to put my framing into practice and just keep going. What a real two-sided market would require. A two-sided market has 2 sides. That sounds obvious. It isn't. A functioning two-sided labor market requires, at minimum, that both sides can see what is happening, receive feedback when they act, and access tools that allow them to participate meaningfully. Not identical tools, not identical outcomes, but symmetry in the basic infrastructure of participation. The ability to know where you stand, what happened to your input, and what the system requires of you next. Without that baseline, there is no market. There is a queue with a payment mechanism on one end. Toll road that nobody can get off of. That is the measuring stick. Everything that follows is measured against it. What Taleo marketed. Taleo Corporation described itself in its own SEC filings as a system designed to match people to jobs. The language was consistent across a decade of public documentation. In its 2004 S1, filed at the moment of its initial public offering, Taleo described solutions that would, I quote, more accurately match total labor demands and supply across complex organizations. It promised to help employers, quote, attract and retain top talent, quote, match skills and job requirements, and, quote, increase the quality and speed of hires. The word matching appears throughout. So does the language of mutual benefit, better outcomes for organization, better placement for workers. By the time of its 2009 secondary offering, Taleo had over 4,100 customers worldwide, including 46 of the Fortune 100. Revenue had grown from $12.5 million in 2001 to $168 million in 2008. The market had validated the claim. In 2012, Oracle acquired Taleo for $1.9 billion. What Oracle bought is documented in the same public record Taleo spent 8 years building. The filings described in precise detail what the system actually delivered, to whom, at what level of care, and with what infrastructure behind it. That's what we're going to look at next. Failure mode 1. Filtering in a matching market. Taleo sold matching. The public record shows profit streams derived from filtering. That distinction is not semantic. A matching system optimizes for connection. It succeeds when it finds a fit, like a kidney donor exchange. Its goal is to maximize the utility of the pair. A filtering system optimizes for exclusion. It succeeds by reducing volume. Its value proposition is not, I found the right person, but rather, I successfully got rid of the wrong ones. The architecture of asymmetry. The tell is found in Taleo's own metrics. In a decade of SEC filings, Taleo did not track match quality or long-term retention. They tracked throughput, time to filter, candidate pool reduction, and volume processed. When a company brags about delivering the top 5% of candidates, they aren't making a matching claim, they're making a cutting claim. The system was architected to ensure 95% of participants failed to reach their goal. This design created a profound information asymmetry. Taleo's 2004 S1 filing outlines a world-class support infrastructure for employers, 24/7 multilingual support and dedicated account managers. For the job seeker, the filing mentions only an intuitive interface. I quote, there was no feedback loop, no status visibility, and no escalation path for the candidate. This wasn't an oversight, it was the architecture. The Nash equilibrium of noise. Because job seekers received no signal, unable to distinguish between a rejection, a technical glitch, or a simple non-review, they behaved as rational actors under conditions of missing information. They increased their volume. They applied to more roles to hedge against the silence. Perhaps think of it like never knowing if the credit card machine accepted your credit card, but needing to still have access to the milk and bread on the other side. ATS systems are the credit card machine of online hiring, except you never know if it works. This triggered a destructive feedback loop. Job seekers applied more roles due to the lack of feedback. Employers, overwhelmed by the surge in volume, purchased more aggressive filters. The filters produce more silence for the candidates. The cycle repeats, increasing the noise without ever improving the match quality. This is a classic Nash non-converging equilibrium. Every participant is making the correct logical choice based on the information they have. Yet the aggregate result is a disaster that serves no one. This is not a new thing. Taleo did not solve a market failure. They industrialized it. By charging for the filters that necessitated more filtering, they became the only party profiting from the inefficiency. Failure mode 2. Job seekers were never designed as users. Imagine a restaurant where the kitchen has cameras on every burner, temperature sensors in every pan, and a dedicated sommelier for the chef. The dining room has no menus, no wait staff, and no way to send food back. You are still expected to show up, sit down, and pay, not with money, but with your time and your patience and your hope that someone back there noticed you arrived. That is not a restaurant with bad service. That is a restaurant where you were never the customer. Taleo's system worked like this. Excuse me. Not by accident and not temporarily. Across 8 years of SEC filings, 2004, 2009, 2012, the company described in precise detail every tool, dashboard, workflow, and support structure it built. All of it faced one direction. The employer side had 24/7 multilingual support. As described in the 2004 S1, they had dedicated account managers, configurable workflows, and reporting dashboards. The job seeker side had, in Taleo's own language, in the same 2004 S1 filing, an intuitive interface. No feedback loop, no application status visibility, no escalation path. No way to know whether your resume was reviewed, filtered out by a keyword match, or lost to a technical error. By the time of the 2009 secondary offering, Taleo served over 4,100 customers, including 46 of the Fortune 100. The system processed millions of candidates at that scale and could not tell a single one of them what happened. And that fact eliminates two explanations at once. If job seekers were stakeholders, people whose experience the system was designed to serve, like they're a two-sided market in everything, two sides, then candidate-side user experience would have existed. Not out of kindness, but out of business logic. In any other two-sided market, the buyer demands to see the delivery. The person buying a Gucci purse wants to know a knockoff didn't get delivered. The person sending flowers wants to know the flowers weren't wilted upon arrival. In a labor market, an employer should want to know if their match is simply the last person standing in a broken gauntlet. Yet, employers with MBAs, backed by investors with MBAs, buying a platform built by executives with MBAs, accepted this non-existent user experience for half the market and well over 95% of the users in the US for over a decade, lack of user experience. And when the due diligence was finished, Oracle paid $1.9 billion for it anyway. That is not an oversight. That is a revealed preference. If job seekers were a product, if the goal was the efficient delivery of high-quality talent, instrumentation would also have existed. You watch your production line. You measure where the input enters and where it stalls. You optimize throughput on both ends. None of that infrastructure existed on the candidate side. Whatever this system was, it was not an efficiency operation. So, job seekers were not stakeholders. They were not products. Efficiency wasn't being paid for or bought. But without their participation, Taleo had nothing to sell. No candidate volume means no employer value. No employer value means no subscription revenue. No subscription revenue means no 1.9 billion acquisition price. Their time and attention was the unpaid necessity for everyone else's transaction. The entire financial architecture of the company depended on a population that the product was not designed to serve, was not built to inform, and was not structured to retain. They showed up because they had to. The system worked because they had nowhere else to go. In a survival market, and every due diligence team with MBAs to know what that meant, built it, funded it, endorsed it, and bought it for $1.9 billion eventually. Failure mode 3, no tech support infrastructure for half the market. Every system fails. Software glitches, keyword filters misfire, resumes render incorrectly. Excuse me, I have a cold. My sister had a cold. Qualified people fall through cracks that have nothing to do with their qualifications. This is not a hypothetical. It is an operational certainty in any system processing candidates at the scale Taleo operated. The question that reveals organizational priorities is not whether a system fails. It is whose failures get caught. Failure mode 2 described the support architecture Taleo built for employers. The tracking portal, the dedicated account managers, the executive review of satisfaction reports. That infrastructure did more than provide good service. It created a failure detection system. If something broke on the employer side, the architecture could see it, name it, assign it, and track it to resolution. On the candidate side, none of that existed. And that absence produces a specific, measurable consequence. The system could not distinguish between working correctly and failing. A qualified candidate filtered out by a keyword mismatch looked identical from every measurement point the architecture provided to an unqualified candidate filtered out by design. A resume lost to a formatting error produced the same silence as a resume that was reviewed and rejected. There was no signal. And without signal, there is no self-correction. Think of it like an emergency room that tracks every bed assignment, every shift change, every billing code, but has no discharge paperwork. Patients leave. Some leave because they were treated. Some leave because they waited 6 hours and gave up. Some leave because they were called but never heard their name. The hospital cannot distinguish between a successful treatment and an abandoned visit, but the bill arrives either way. The 2004 S1 describes the employer support architecture in detail. 24/7 multilingual support via telephone, email, and web portal. All requests tracked with status reporting. Senior executives reviewing customer satisfaction metrics. A dedicated service account manager assigned to each customer. It's from the 2004 S1 under customer support. The candidate-facing description in the same filing, intuitive applications available in 13 languages. No support infrastructure, no feedback mechanism, no escalation path. The 2006 10K filed 2 years into Taleo's life as a public company, covering 850 customers and 800,000 registered users, filling positions in almost 100 countries from the 2006 10K under customers, repeats the employer support language nearly verbatim. The candidate-facing description had changed in one respect. Languages supported had grown from 13 to 21. Nothing else. By 2011, the final annual report before Oracle's acquisition, employer support had expanded to 7 global locations operating in a follow-the-sun model with real-time dashboards, automated escalation alerts, and incident management. Candidate-facing solutions were now available in 31 languages. That was the entirety of the candidate side evolution across the company's full public filing history. This is not a question of resources. Taleo had the engineering capacity to build everything described above for one side. The decision not to build failure detection on the candidate side, the side that could not opt out of the market, was not a constraint. It was an allocation. 1/2 of the market was operationally maintained from the first public filing to the last. The other half, the side whose participation generated the value, was never instrumented. Not when the company had 140 customers, not when it had 850, not when it had 4,100, and not when Oracle valued it at $1.9 billion in their 2011 10. That is not a gap in coverage. It is an architecture that guaranteed an entire population's experience in a survival market would remain invisible, and that no one inside the system would ever have to answer for it. In a survival market, tallying the distributed costs, failure mode 1, 2, and 3. For job seekers, the ghost hour tax, failure mode 1, filtering versus matching. Failure mode 2, no design for job seekers, and failure mode 3, no failure detection, created a massive uncompensated transfer of labor. The math: if a single applicant spends 30 minutes on a Taleo-hosted application that, due to a lack of feedback or technical glitch, never reaches a human eye, that is a ghost hour. The scale? Taleo processed millions of applications. Even at a conservative estimate of $20 an hour, because they have 46 of the Fortune 100 companies. Even at a conservative estimate of $20 an hour for job seekers' time, the aggregate value of lost labor across 4,100 global customers is not a rounding error. It is an aggregate cost that scales into the hundreds of millions. The small business tax, paying for market pollution. Small businesses are the secondary victims of all parts of the established friction, especially the Nash equilibrium of noise. Even if a Main Street shop in Des Moines, Iowa, never spent a dime on Taleo, they paid for its existence through market degradation. First, the volume trap. Because Taleo taught job seekers that 95% of applications disappeared into a black hole, job seekers responded rationally. They began spraying and praying, throwing spaghetti at the wall. This noise does not stay inside Taleo's ecosystem, especially when the vast majority of job boards are white labels and job seekers can't tell what they're looking at. It spills over into the inbox of the local hardware store or the boutique accounting firm. Second, the increased search friction. The small businesses, which typically lacks a dedicated HR department, is now forced to manually filter through 300 low-intent applications for a single role. Taleo effectively shifted the labor of sorting from the enterprise, which used a bot, to the small business, which has to use a human. Access cost inversion. The noise doesn't distribute evenly. When Amazon posts a role on Indeed's free tier, the brand alone keeps it visible. When a local daycare in Poughkeepsie, Illinois, posts a $12 an hour opening on the same platform, it drops below the fold within 3 days for a high turnover role that needs filling now. So the daycare pays $50 a day to stay visible for a position whose wage can't absorb that cost, which means the wage stays low, which means the turnover stays high, which means they're back on the platform next month paying again in 3 months or whatever it is. I do market research. I wander around to local daycares, and it's a thing. So the wage stays low, which means the turnover stays high, which means they're back on the platform in the next few months, paying again. State workforce sites offer free postings, but all job seekers are mindful of what that means. A waste of time. Again, most local daycares I talk to, they had posted on free state websites for like 5 months straight, and they found it a waste of their time. They were posting and nothing happens. They might as well just post on Indeed so they can get it done. The free labor market isn't free. It was made expensive by the noise that enterprise filtering systems produced and never cleaned up. Wages stagnate accordingly, while time to hire and cost of hiring skyrockets. Local labor drain. The cost isn't only in dollars. The same feedback loop that floods small business inboxes also contracts their labor supply. Again, I talk to people in my local small businesses in my area. A college student spending 30 hours a week navigating enterprise ATS systems is less interested in the summer jobs they used to be interested in. The time cost imposed by large-scale filtering doesn't stay inside those systems. People used to hire college kids to serve alcohol over the summer. They can't find them as much as easily. And this is one of those reasons. It's not the only reason. It's a complex dynamic system. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but I am saying that factors in. At scale, yes, it does. The time cost imposed by large-scale filtering doesn't stay inside those systems. It pulls labor attention out of adjacent markets entirely. The economic damage. This is a predatory barrier to entry. By making the public air of the labor market so noisy that only an expensive AI filter can breathe it, Taleo forced small businesses into an operational disadvantage. They're paying a tax in the form of wasted hours and lower quality hires caused by a feedback loop they didn't start and can't stop. Municipalities, the downstream carry. Job seekers and small businesses absorb the direct costs. Municipalities absorb what neither of them can. Every week, a frictional unemployment extends the gap between tax revenues projected and tax revenue collected. Safety net draws increase. Housing stability decreases. Workforce boards, already operating without visibility into what platforms are actually delivering, lose the ability to advise residents effectively because the data they would need was never built into the system. The costs are measurable, and I've mapped them in detail in a previous article a few months ago called The Local Costs of a Broken Labor Market. The short version, when a hiring infrastructure is owned by private platforms with no civic accountability, cities carry the externalities without the instruments to see them, price them, or push back. Taleo did not create municipal budget pressure by itself, but the architecture described in failure modes 1 through 3, filtering without feedback, uninstrumented candidate experience, no failure detection, extended job searches, degraded local hiring channels, and pushed costs downstream to the public bodies least equipped to trace it back to its source. What Oracle bought. In 2012, Oracle bought Taleo for $1.9 billion. Oracle is not a naive buyer. They have acquired more than 100 companies. Due diligence at Oracle scale is not a formality. It is a sophisticated, well-resourced process conducted by people who understand what enterprise software infrastructure looks like, when it is built correctly and when it is not. Everything documented in the failure modes above was visible in Taleo's public filings at the time of its acquisition. I don't have an economics degree or business degree. This was my first time going through the SEC filings, and I could see it. I would think that people who are trained in this could have seen it too. Oracle's purchase price was not a mistake. It was a valuation of the product as it was designed. The due diligence, the transaction was vetted by, I don't know how to pronounce this word, Catalyst partners and Oracle's internal teams. They reviewed the employer-only support infrastructure and the candidate-facing silence. That was in the 2012 14A, according to the opinion of a financial advisor. I learned 14As and 10Ks and S1s. Edgar is actually very good, I have to say, for the SEC. You make a very functional website for newbies, so that's cool for me. The revealed preference. The board's recommendation to shareholders in the financial valuation metrics, discounted cash flow, revenue multiples, focused entirely on employer throughput. The job seeker did not appear in the equation because they had never appeared in the product. It was under their board recommendation in the 2012 14A. Architectural endorsement. This requires no interpretation. Oracle did not inherit a flawed system. They purchased a documented architecture with full visibility into structural asymmetries. By pricing Taleo at $1.9 billion, Oracle did more than buy a revenue stream. They ratified the design. The harm documented in this analysis persisted through every layer of institutional review. This is not an allegation. It is a description of what the public record shows a sophisticated buyer chose to purchase. Oracle paid $1.9 billion for that. Check the research. The failure modes described in this analysis are not novel observations. They are the kind of foundational work that basic due diligence for a coordination market would reference. I make all my data as falsifiable as possible because I am very well aware that I'm saying something that needs to be spot checked. George Akerlof, 1970, The Market for Lemons. It's pretty much classic. Information asymmetry causes market degradation when one side cannot evaluate quality low quality signals. When one side cannot evaluate quality, lower quality signals displace higher quality ones. Akerlof described it. It was very good. John Nash, Non-Corporative Games. That was from 1951, I believe. I have a citation here. Rational actors operating independently under incomplete information can produce collectively suboptimal outcomes. Yes. Equilibrium does not guarantee efficiency. Richer and Giroux, platform competition in two-sided markets. That was a classic too as well. Two-sided platforms mediate between distinct user groups with structural asymmetric incentives. Platform design determines how value and obligation distribute across sides. System design and user infrastructure. There's a guy named Nielsen on usability engineering. And then another guy, there was on human-centered design for interactive systems from the International Organization for Standardization. Interactive systems, just reading things too quickly here. Human-centered design for interactive systems from ISO. ACM Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. Have that there too. Also, I list my SEC filings that I referenced in the analysis was from 2004 S1, 2005 10K, 2006 10K, 2009 S1, 2011 10K, and 2012 14. The job applicant perspective is the company producing the series. We are the candidate side infrastructure that was never built. TJAP is not a better job board. It is not a smarter matching algorithm. We are the actual infrastructure, measurement, feedback, failure detection, and signal for the population every hiring platform depends on, but none of them were designed to serve. It starts with something simple, a crowdsourced anonymous library for job ads for job seekers to avoid. Save time job searching. Addressing the biggest pain point, lemon ads and identity theft. Jay Jones has taken down 30,000 fake ads on LinkedIn alone. Imagine what everybody can do together. And also, I just flabbergasted at how much people don't understand how much identity theft and economic harm is happening now. I don't put numbers to it because it's really harder to accurately understand what that even looks like at scale. Because I have enough incentive to be deeply concerned without having enough numbers to be able to quantify it properly. Because only one person is a data point and it's indicative, but you need more to really surface it. Anyway, regardless, lemon ads and identity theft. Think of it as the first instrument placed on the market that has been running uninstrumented for 20 years. Yeah, a survival market has been running uninstrumented for 20 years. Yeah, it's not okay. Civic instability, anyone? Wild. Can you imagine? It's like the opposite of the FDA and the health department. Usually in survival marketplaces, we put infrastructure to protect Americans. In the job market, we put instrumentation to profit from delaying Americans' access to survival at scale. And it's not only in the US, it's everywhere. We profit from it, stochastically delaying their access to survival resources. If that's not indicative of society absolutely upside down. Usually in society, when we're in a survival situation, we band together. In this case, when we're in a survival situation, you need to be isolated alone, lest you lose access to survival even further. And you can't complain unless you lose access to survival. Squid Games. We're gaming the American population at scale. It's actually sociologically just alarming. It's not okay. We need to not do that anymore, you know? That's what the job applicant perspective is, because I do not apologize or look for approval from reference frames. I do not respect this point of view. It's not okay. It's a frame lock. Honestly, it's a frame lock. I was inside of it too. I'm breaking other people out. So me too. I was up until 2020 when I entered the job market, I was part of the frame lock. So conclusion, Taleo is not an isolated case. Oh, sorry. Nope. The architecture, so it starts something small, but the architecture underneath TGAP is designed for what comes next. And I described it in previous things. I'm very imaginative on the score. I like system design. The systems we document in this series were built to serve one side of the labor market. We built ours to serve the other. I don't know. I think I have a gangbusters idea because survival market of billions, the motivation, the leverage points are all on my side. They're pretty great, actually. Conclusion, Taleo is not an isolated case. It is a blueprint. Built by people who knew better, funded by people who knew better, acquired for $1.9 billion by a company that knew exactly what they were buying. Once you see the structure in Taleo, you'll see it everywhere. The same pattern repeats across the category. Different branding, different interfaces, same underlying logic. The receipts are public. The framework is established. The harm parties are real and their costs are measurable. The series will continue working through those companies one by one. We will use the same framework, the public record as the source material, and basic market structure as the baseline. Plug and play, drag and drop. If there's a company you want to add it to the list, send it. The set list is long, but we take requests. Yeah, so that's it. It's been a long one, so I'll let you go pretty soon. But, we're paradigm shifting it up. Get excited, I'm going to be like, I like Shanzu. I like jujitsu, economic jujitsu, Use some things, weight against, to move it in your favor. I'm architecting a paradigm shift here. It takes effort. It's a thing. Anyway, stay sane out there. Be kind to one another. The internet turned the world into a snowstorm. I think the real thing to realize is you got to listen to the drivers on the road. That's the way. So, stay sane. World needs more sane people. Cheers.